Hey everybody, how are you? This is Jim from the Pain PT. Today's topic is going to be evidence. Evidence. What's the evidence? Okay, what's the evidence in yourself? This is the foundation, guys, for your approach to healing, your approach to any condition in your body. We need to look at the actual real evidence you have for your condition. What's the evidence? Now, when I do an assessment with somebody or initial assessment, evaluation, as a healthcare practitioner, I want to know what's going on. I want to know the story, the history, who the person is, what happened to them. I want to see the medical reports. I want to see the psychological reports, right? So we want to glean all this evidence and then from real evidence, put it together to make a diagnosis. Now, here's the problem. In medicine, healthcare medicine, we don't collect enough evidence, in my opinion. We're only collecting physical evidence. Okay, maybe a scan or a report or looking at some physical tissue. And doctors, although well-meaning, their training is based primarily on physical stuff, so they're not going to look at the mental, emotional side. But they're missing the whole picture, guys. When we're looking for evidence for your condition, we want to start with the physical, okay? But we also need to include the mental, the emotional, and the behavioral components. Okay, so we need to have a very broad, comprehensive information in front of us, okay? So I want to see everything. So in addition to knowing what happened to you, I want to know your history. How did it start? When did it start? What happened to you? Was there a physical injury? Do you have any evidence of that now through a scan, a report that we can look at? It makes sense. How long have you had your condition? That's going to be another important variable. Is it acute, subacute? Is it chronic? Okay, because we know again from the research, again, evidence-based. My approach here, and I want to teach you guys, is evidence-based. Okay, as a healthcare practitioner, I've done some research, I've studied this, trained in this for 2 master's degrees. And my job is to use the evidence, okay? And the evidence is coming more. It's coming a lot more through the research, but it's not being integrated into medicine yet. It's very new, a lot of this stuff. Dr. Sarno was the one who theorized all this, and a lot of his stuff is true. But we have a lot of good evidence now from the brain MRIs, that we can determine there's a lot of things going on in the brain. We also have psychological evidence that emotions, anxiety, depression, things like that, influence can cause and predict symptoms, physical symptoms. Okay, so when we're looking at the evidence, guys, for yourself, you want to look at the physical evidence. What do you have in that category we would know for sure that is maybe a physical problem, that we can see, yep, this is a physical problem. This is a structural problem in your body. Yes, this is what it is. We have enough evidence for it, and there's not enough evidence for the brain, let's say, to be the contributing factor, the sole contributing factor, or the primary contributing factor. Okay, so you can very simply say, is it body or is it brain? Okay, body is going to be a local injury, usually going to be acute, subacute, or pretty severe damage in the body. You know, somebody had a stroke, somebody had severe joint change, things like that. But the body repairs itself, guys. The body repairs itself amazingly well. When you think about a surgery, knee replacements, let's say, they rip the whole knee out and they bang in a new knee and they do and it heals. It heals up and people return. The body repairs. Now, what's the evidence on the other side, outside the physical side? Okay, here's the things I screen for in my assessment when I work with people. I do standardized tests because, again, these have been valid, reliable tests that have been used around the world. They carry very real information that we need to look at equally as important as physical stuff. Again, doctors don't do this. They're only looking at physical stuff, and they go, maybe stress can cause it. No. The psychological side can absolutely cause the same pain, if not worse, than the physical side. Okay, so when we go to the psychological side, what I'm screening for is anxiety, generalized anxiety screening for depression, screening for catastrophizing. I'm screening for emotional suppression, because we know emotions are involved here, how well you do with your emotions, expressing your emotions. And I'm screening for what's called central sensitization, the CSI inventory. Okay, these are all markers that we know in the research that can contribute to chronic symptoms in the body, can contribute to symptoms, period. Okay, so if you have a number of these, the other thing I screen for is your ACE score, adverse childhood events. Okay, so I screen for all these things. And if you're showing up positive in a number of these things, that's evidence. That's very real evidence for a psychological side that is basically contributing partly, if not solely, to the symptoms. Okay, what else is evidence? Again, like I mentioned, how long have you had it? If it starts to become chronic, the evidence is shifting more towards the brain, because a large amount of chronic conditions are brain issues now, central nervous system. They're not local issues. Okay. The other thing we look for is conditioning pattern, behavioral patterns, personality traits. Okay, do you have some of the personality traits that Dr. Sarno mentioned that can be mediators or drivers of symptoms in the body? Okay, again, like I said, we look for emotions, how you deal with emotions, what's your emotional style. Okay, are you a person who is very repressive or suppressive? I ask you about every emotion. How do you deal with your emotions? Okay, anxiety, anger, sadness. How do you work with these emotions? Okay, I want to know. That gives me more information about you. Okay, so I want to look at that side. I also want to look at the side of what are you doing? Are you behaviorally? Are you doing everything? Hey, I'm doing everything. I'm not just, it's not one thing I don't do. I do everything normally. Or have a lot of avoidant behaviors, pain behaviors, you could say? Do I just pull back? Do I avoid? Don't do certain things out of fear or of the symptoms getting worse. Okay, these are avoidant behaviors are very real. They lead to conditioning. They lead to sensitization. Okay, they can be drivers as well, reinforcers of symptoms. Okay, just as much. What are you doing? So physically, what are you doing? Behaviorally, I look at the mental component. Thinking wise too, what do you believe? What do you believe? What have you been told by other practitioners? What other treatments have you had? Okay, if you had a lot of treatments and haven't gotten better, well, gosh, more evidence, guys, more evidence. Now, we take all this evidence, try to gain as much evidence as we can on everything, look at the whole thing very clearly, like I'm a physical therapist by trade. Look at everything objectively. Objectively. Evidence is objective. It's like I tell people, when you went to a court of law, they're not going by your emotions only. They're going by the evidence, not going by what you believe. We're going by real evidence. Now, if the evidence adds up that this is a brain-driven issue, that's the diagnosis, okay? That is the diagnosis. And if I make the diagnosis with you or someone else does, that's what it is. Okay, so let's say I say, yeah, your migraine that you think is a migraine, it's not a migraine. Okay, so we need to drop the label low back pain, or whatever you want to call it, IBS, fibromyalgia, whatever you want to call it. No, drop that label, because that's not the diagnosis. That's not that's not what this is. You can call it TMS. Honor Dr. Sarno. That's one of the truest words. TMS. I have TMS. I like to call it BS. I have BS, brain sensitization or brain-induced symptoms, brain symptoms. Okay, stress symptoms, psychological symptoms, anything else. This is not. Don't call it a label, a medical label, because again, words are important, very important, and what you believe. Okay, so the evidence leads to the diagnosis. The diagnosis leads to the treatment. Okay, very systematically here. Boom, boom, boom. And if your diagnosis is TMS, brain symptoms, brain sensitization, BS, then there's a very logical way of working this thing, okay, to improve. And it's not physical treatment, right? It's not. So that's why Sarn said we need to stop physical treatments. And if you're doing these things, because what can happen is they, again, reinforce, or you believe that it's physical. Why? You wouldn't do a physical treatment for a psychological problem, would you? Now, you would do physical exercise and you would do strength training maybe, and you would do getting back to your life. Absolutely, this is important, but this is not the same as going to, let's say, get a treatment, okay, to fix the problem. So, if this is TMS, BS, okay, this is my brain, we move to the psychological. Primarily, we move to the psychological side, which is the mental and emotional aspects, which is the brain. We're working on treating the brain. Okay, we're not working on treating the body. The only thing body-wise we do is get back to everything physically. We can return to everything. Now, again, you can return to everything. I mean, that's the truth. Now, the thing is, you may get a lot of symptoms because the brain is reacting. Okay, that's called sensitization or conditioning pattern. Okay, that's what will happen. That's a brain-driven, central nervous system-driven issue. There's nothing wrong with the body. Absolutely nothing wrong with the body when you get this stuff. Meaning you can go train for a marathon if you want. Now you might get a ton of symptoms. Yeah, you might get a huge backlash, but that doesn't mean anything's wrong with the body. So you guys need to understand, when you get the diagnosis, you need to stick with the diagnosis, okay, based on real evidence, evidence-based. Okay, I try to be as evidence-based as possible when I give you guys this diagnosis. I'm not just, don't believe me, I'm not a faith healer. Don't believe Jim because he just tells me that. No, I need to go by evidence. Don't throw the diagnosis in the trash when your symptoms get bad. No. In fact, that's more evidence, okay? If your symptoms go boom, go crazy, they go really strong, you did something small, or just, it's not physical, guys. Again, that doesn't make sense. That's not evidence. That physical problems don't do that. Okay, so it's more evidence for the brain. Because so many people I work with just start doubting it more when the symptoms get stronger or they're not going away. Again, they're not going away typically because it's not an acute problem. Acute problems heal. You break a bone, it's going to heal. You hurt a muscle, it's going to heal. Okay, that's going to happen regardless. The reason it doesn't happen, the reason you still have symptoms, is because it's here. Central nervous system. We have a lot of evidence for this now, a lot of neuroscience evidence. The biggest problem we have in medicine now, the biggest problem is that we do not do MRIs of the brain. I'm hoping that's coming at some point. We do MRIs of the rest of the body. We do MRIs of the back and the neck and all these other areas. We scan and we do check this, we check that. Amazingly enough, we don't do that in the brain. It's incredible, because the brain is the most powerful organ in the body. But we don't do it. So we're cut off at the head. And so physicians don't have that data. That's why it's very hard for them to give you guys the diagnosis. They're looking at data. They're looking at lab tests. They're looking at MRIs and scans, and they're going off of that. But they're missing a massive piece. So the best way we can do this for now, guys, that I can do this, is to give you these standardized tests to see if you have some of these psychological mediators going on. Look at your history. Look at your whole life, you as a person. Look at maybe other symptoms you've had in the past that could have been TMS as well. And BS, look at what the situation was. What's the story? What's the history? The history. What happened to you? When did it start? What was going on? Many, many times in people I see, there was not even a physical injury at the time it started. There was not even enough physical evidence at the time to say that's what caused it. Sometimes there is, and it becomes chronic. But many, many times, what drove or caused the symptom in the first place was stress. Psychological, not physical stress. Okay, so that's evidence. That's evidence. That's real evidence, guys. We need to know that's the truth. And we need to understand that the psychological side is just as powerful, if not more powerful, in producing symptoms in your body as physical injuries, as a physical side. And just because you have a physical symptom, it doesn't mean it's physical. This is where the problem lies. We need to understand this. So guys, evidence, real evidence that we get from you, that I get from you, or other people, other TMS doctors and people working in this field, can give you your diagnosis. When you have your diagnosis, you need to believe that. You need to believe that is what you have. You can write down your evidence if you want for yourself and return to it, because your brain, again, the limbic brain, is very likely to trick you. It's very likely you to believe that, no, this isn't TMS or BS. There's something wrong with me. And on top of this, guys, you have all the information you received from your doctors and healthcare providers previously. These are nocebos. These can be nocebos. I've seen it so many times. They are very powerful. Words are very powerful, especially if you believe them. So if people have told you have this, you have that, and you believe that, or it's deep in your subconscious, that is also playing into the symptom. Okay, you have to overcome these old beliefs or messages or what people have told you because of the real evidence, the whole picture of evidence. What makes sense here? And then, guys, we stick with that. I can't say it enough. When you have the diagnosis, you need to believe that 100%, because as soon as you start doubting, you start reinforcing it. Because it's the brain-driven problem, right? So as soon as you start doubting, that's anxiety, fear category, you start reinforcing the symptom. It keeps going. Okay, you can't have any doubt. Again, it's not a faith thing. It's evidence-based. Again, based on your history. That's the diagnosis. And then once we have it, we work with it. So guys, I hope today, this is a little bit of a long video, but I hope it's helpful, because I really want to drive home the idea that evidence-based, use the evidence. Okay, what's the evidence? What's the evidence? And once you have the evidence, you stick with it. You don't go away from the evidence. Emotional brain is very likely to be irrational. It's very likely to not be logical. It's not the logical part of your brain. Again, it'd be like somebody coming into a court of law. Let's look at the evidence for your case. And you say, yeah, you got this. And the person says, oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. No, that's not me. Yeah. And they're going crazy and they're emotional. And you say, you know what? You're not going to believe that, right? Just because somebody's emotional or anxious or all getting out of it. That's not the evidence, okay? So we need to go by the evidence. All right, and we need to stick in that part of our brain. I talked about this, guys, prefrontal cortex. We got to use that part of the brain. That's the part of the brain we're going to use to heal. We use it in conjunction with the emotional brain. We need to stay there, because otherwise the emotional brain takes over, and forget it. Then you're in trouble. Then you're controlled by it. Then you're believing all these things, and you're going down the rabbit hole. Okay, guys, evidence. What's your evidence? Hey, what's your evidence? If you don't know, or you're still doubting, or you're still wondering, reach out. Reach out to me, or reach out to another TMS practitioner to get a diagnosis, to go through your evidence, because it's the foundation. It's the foundation of a house. It's the foundation of your house of healing. The foundation of your house of healing is built on strong evidence. And then we can build up from that point. Otherwise, shaky foundation, cracked foundation, hard to get progress, hard to move forward. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you guys